Kazuo Ohno was 22 years older than Tatsumi Hijikata and was already in his late 40s when they met, and in his 50s before they began to collaborate together to create what is now known as Butoh. Kazuo Ohno did not perform in the first Butoh performance, Kinjiki, but his collaboration with Tatsumi Hijikata did begin earlier than that. Kazuo Ohno was in a piece called The Old Man and the Sea, based on the Hemingway story, and apparently, according to Yoshito Ohno, Hijikata began to show up to rehearsals and begin to just give his advice, and his role in that performance grew to become almost of a choreographer, even though he wasn't officially the director of the piece. That was The Old Man and the Sea, and then Tatsumi Hijikata directed Kazuo Ohno's son, Yoshito Ohno, in what's considered the first Butoh performance, Kinjiki, in 1959. But then in the restaging of that first Butoh piece, Tatsumi Hijikata insisted that Kazuo Ohno perform in it. And again, according to Yoshito Ohno, this performance was what changed Kazuo Ohno's approach to dance. Before then, Kazuo Ohno would perform to full houses doing a more socially acceptable type of dance. Again, a lot of this is coming from Yoshito Ohno's memoirs about his father. But in this restaging of Kinjiki, Kazuo Ohno played a forlorn, aging male prostitute. And this, again, was a scandalous role for someone like him to play in Japanese society. And it changed his approach to dance. Again, Yoshito Ohno describes it as saying that before this performance, Kazuo Ohno's work was focused on the perspective of someone who's alive, but afterwards his performances began to focus from the perspective of the departed. A little bit abstract way of talking about it, but again, this piece marked a sharp change in his performance, and this began a period of 6 or 7 years where Kazuo Ohno and Tatsumi Hijikata collaborated very intensely, very deeply in a number of performances. But apparently, when Tatsumi Hijikata choreographed Kazuo Ohno, he didn't give him very detailed instructions. It was mostly enter the stage now, walk to the front of the stage here. And it was up to Kazuo Ohno to decide and develop what he would do in the performance. And again, Kazuo Ohno would not perform the same thing every night. He would not choreograph things ahead of time. His art was dedicated to the spontaneous expression of his soul, his spirit in the moment. For all of his life, Kazuo Ohno's performances were always improvised. I think I've mentioned before, I saw Kazuo Ohno perform 3 times in New York City in 1999, and it was 3 nights in a row, and every night he performed differently, different movements, different energy. He did some duets with his son Yoshito Ohno. Yoshito Ohno's work was entirely choreographed. So Yoshito Ohno would be doing the same motions night after night, and his father would be improvising around him. It was astounding, and every night just grew in intensity, in emotion, in energy, and the third night was just one of the more astounding, magical experiences of my life, seeing Kazuo Ohno perform in that third performance. Interestingly enough, Yoshito Ohno says that his father's dances always began with words, that he could not even begin to dance until he had used language and poetry to, the way Yoshito Ohno describes it, excavate his inner soul. He would take notebooks, read poetry, write poetry, and use language in order to begin the exploration of the depths of his soul. And only after a long period of doing this would Kazuo Ohno feel ready to take this into dance, into performance, into movement. So Kazuo Ohno worked with Tatsumi Hijikata from 1959 into the mid-60s. And then in the end of the 60s, Kazuo Ohno retired from dance. He was in his 60s at that point. I think he was having a crisis of his own art. He didn't retire from creating dance or creating art, but he did retire from public performance. He did make a number of films by this Japanese filmmaker Chiaki Nagano that were very important in bringing Kazuo Ohno to a place where he was ready to perform again. But famously, the incident that inspired him to return to performance in his 70s at this point was going to see this art exhibit. And right as he was about to leave, he saw this abstract painting that reminded him of this dancer he had seen in 1929, an Argentinian dancer, Antonia Mercé, known as La Argentina. And seeing this painting reminded him of how amazed he had been by her dance. And this inspired him to return to dance. And in his 70s, he returned to performance and created some of the most astounding works of his career. He came back first with this piece called Admiring La Argentina, which was about that dancer and the way that dancer affected his life. He worked with Tatsumi Hijikata again on this piece. Hijikata was credited with choreographing that piece. But again, choreographing Kazuo Ohno, it's not the way we would think of it as choreographing, because Kazuo Ohno relied so much always on his inner spirit, on the spontaneity of the moment to dance, that he would rely on the spontaneity and improvisation to dance. Kazuo Ohno's dance was devoted to the revealing of the spiritual. He spoke explicitly about that many times when he spoke about his dance, that it was always about revealing the inner life, the spiritual, and that is why improvisation was so important to him, because he understood that we're never the same day to day. In order to be true, to be authentic, you needed to be free in the moment. Another thing he would often say is don't try to be good, by which he doesn't mean don't try to be morally good. When he said don't try to be good, he meant don't worry about technique. Don't try to be impressive. Don't try to impress the audience. None of those things are important. Butoh is about authenticity. It's about presence. And everything that he did to develop technique was not a physical technique, but an expressive technique. You need the physical technique in order to be able to respond to your inner life. But the physical technique was never the purpose. It's only to allow yourself to be more free to express your inner life. So after Kazuo Ohno came out of retirement, he began to be very active and began to perform internationally. He began to tour. He performed a number of different pieces, My Mother, The Dead Sea. When I saw him, it was kind of a retrospective of his work. Again, I want to stress that one of the things that is so important to Kazuo Ohno's Butoh is a sense of letting go of yourself. That's the reason so many Butoh artists put on the white makeup, to erase the self. And Kazuo Ohno said that it's not about freedom to do what you want or to do what you think. It's freedom from thought, freedom from will. And it's not to escape yourself, but to free yourself from preconceptions, from anything that keeps you from the spontaneity of the moment. And if you can free yourself from yourself, you can realize your connection to everything in the universe. In that sense, there's something about Butoh which is very Buddhist, the idea that we are all connected, and that liberating yourself from your thought, from your will, from your intention opens you up to realizing that everything, that you're part of everything, that you can be the insect, you can be the grass, you can be the wind blowing in the air. And it doesn't mean you're being untrue to yourself or you're forgetting yourself. It's a deeper authenticity, a deeper spontaneity. And that's just beginning to get to the heart of how Butoh is a spiritual dance, because it's about revealing. It's about revealing and being present and being in the moment. Kazuo Ohno danced with a depth of emotion that is unusual for Butoh artists. Many Butoh artists try to dance in a way that is less personal. Min Tanaka says, I do not dance in the space, I dance the space. And other Butoh artists like Kazuo Ohno reject that objectification of the body and want to reveal a spirit. But to excavate, that's the word Yoshito Ono used, talking about Kazuo Ohno excavating his soul, to really explore what that means, that revealing of the spirit. Part of it is understanding how large your spirit is, how all-encompassing it is. Sankai Juku talked about finding a way to dance that liberates yourself from the nervous agitations of personal psychology, which doesn't mean you're running away from yourself. It's your honing and excavating to find out how large and how all-encompassing your spirit is. Once you can get away from the sense of desire, sense of personal intention, if you can move in a way that's totally authentic, totally spontaneous, but moving without intention, that's the heart of it. It takes focus, it takes discipline, it takes a rigorous exploration of how large your spirit can be once you let yourself go, to find something that's deeper, that's more true, that's more spontaneous. And in some ways, Kazuo Ohno, more than any other Butoh dancer, really, really embodied that, manifested it. When I saw Kazuo Ohno perform in 1999, he actually performed to a piece by Elvis Presley, I Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And here was Kazuo Ohno, 92 years old, dancing to Elvis singing, Take My Hand, Take My Whole Life Too. And it felt like in that moment, Kazuo Ohno was offering his entire life in a gesture of utter love to the audience. Take my hand, take my whole life too. I can't help falling in love with you. I just feel very lucky that I got to see him perform 3 times in my life. And that I got him to see him perform 3 nights in a row, to see how alive he was every night. Not just how alive he was every night, but how he got deeper and deeper into the work every night. You know, every night was more wonderful than the one before it, and the last one was just so astounding. The depth of emotion, the depth of presence, the depth of love of life, love of audience that he was able to express. But the love, the pain, it was amazing. It was magical. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and sharing it so that other people who might enjoy it can also find it. Also, if you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. I plan to release videos every 2 weeks or so. Some will be essays on the intersection of art and spirituality, and there will also be videos of my own work, my music, and my short films. And finally, if you'd like to support me as a creator, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/BobDiNatale. I'll put a link to that in the description below. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.